Consider an object of impeccable purpose. No malice in its grain, no hunger that can be seen, only a talent for responding to need and a patience that allows it to wait until its bearer forgets the difference between use and enslavement.
My name is Wertilish, and I had lived in the Yewdeep long enough that both roots and residents knew me well. They knew my tread, my pause, my beauty and the way I listened. In the shallow hours when the saplight ran dim and the air grew a little colder, I walked the main ways first. Just because it was sensible, and because if something were going to give, it would do so when the Yewdeep was still settling back into itself. I carried a staff as I moved. It was not a banner or rod of ceremony. It was crafted from an aged dark wood and carried a headpiece carved into an eagle clutching a large amber gem in its talons. When I held it, I felt accompanied by a companion. This companion began its work in a corridor above a chamber used for stores and gatherings. The ceiling above it was thick with reinforcement, a load-bearing arch that had held through the flexing and the slow movements of the place. A young rootkin stood nearby, busying itself with a basket of dried moss. It had the pale wrists of new growth and the earnest eyes of one not yet used to the Yewdeep's indifference. "Wertilish, early," it said. "No, little one, I am on time," I replied. It looked at the staff. "Root wall. Sound," it said. "The deep groans," I said, keeping my tone calm because I could sense its alarm. "Show me." It led me to a place where the sap was visible in a thin line along the join. I crouched, pressed my palm against the root floor, and let my own senses open first. The structure responded to me with its customary slow, wordless language of strain. "Brace. Today," the rootkin said, eager to be useful. "We will," I said, and I meant it. I could have gone to fetch resin strips and binding cord, or called the older hands, or done it the slow way and trusted that it would hold until the work was finished. But the area flexed, and so slightly that anyone else would have missed it. I always sense the moment before collapse, when a structure chose whether or not to keep faith with what it has been asked to bear. The rootkin interrupted my pause. "Wertilish, danger!" My fingers gripped the staff, and it warmed in my palm with an intimate readiness, recognizing my sudden fear. I thrust its butt to the floor, and the gem glowed. The passage responded. The weakness strengthened in a firm correction, and the root wall steadied. The rootkin cheered and hugged me with impressive strength. "I still don't think you and the other rootkin should carry heavy loads beneath it until it has been braced properly," I said, and pressed my palm against it. "This is holding, but it's not healed." It nodded, happy to be given something practical to do. We walked on a little further, and when we reached a place where frost had gathered in a shallow sheen along the wall, I caught my own reflection in it. The ice was not a mirror, not truly, but it held enough of my outline to show what my skin already knew. A pale hollow had formed along my cheekbone, where none had been before. The green sheen that always sat in my hair like leaf shadow looked duller at the ends. I stared until the rootkin stopped and looked back, expecting me to follow. "Wertilish, hurt," it stated, too honest to tell it any other way. "It is nothing," I said, and walked on. I told myself it was the cold and that I was a little fatigued, but ultimately that I was being foolish for thinking anything of it. The next time I used the staff, I did not need an ice sheen to tell me the truth. 3 days later, a section of rootwork in the lower paths began to sag where the Yewdeep had been thawing and refreezing in small, cruel cycles. Root can move through those corridors all day, carrying supplies, bringing water, and dragging the contents from one chamber to another. The place was ordinary enough that people stopped paying attention to it, which is precisely when such structures can become dangerous. I came upon it at a moment that it clearly moved. There were 2 rootkin beneath it, both of them young enough to possess neither fear nor caution. They were chuckling as they walked, one of them balancing a basket on its shoulder, the other the source of the amusement. The root walls suddenly flexed, but I was too far away to reach them, seeing the danger arrive with a knife-thin line. I was drawn forward by an urgent pull from the staff. I struck it to the floor and it responded with eagerness as the gem sent its spell outward. The sag and the fault sealed. The 2 rootkin looked up, startled, then looked at me, wondering how I had conjured safety from the air. One of them said, "Rootkin, saved." I should have felt relief, but I actually felt that I had not chosen the moment of action with the care I should have. The staff had moved with me and through me. It had been waiting for exactly the kind of need that made refusal feel impossible. I crouched and hugged the pair of them. "Go, and do not pass beneath that span until it has been braced properly." They obeyed, still smiling in their simple gratitude. I turned aside into a narrower passage where no one would see me. My fingers went to my cheekbone again, and the hollow was deeper. It was not enough to make me ugly. It was not even enough to make me less beautiful to someone who did not know the exact balance of my face. But I knew. We dryads are shaped more by our own senses, and beauty is not just decoration to us. It is proof that we belong to our kind. The staff rested in my grip with perfect stillness, and yet the warmth in it did not fade. It made me think that it might be learning my habits and beginning to move before being told. That night, I left it in my quarters and went to an older rootkin known as the Root Singer. "Learn, quick," it said. "Answers, wrong." "But the movements," I said. "Cannot. Stop." "I have just been looking for a way to keep them safe," I said, meaning the young ones, the careless ones, the ones who trusted walls that had no obligation to hold. It looked at me for a while. "Your cost." "Something that belongs to me," I said. It nodded, expecting my answer. "Learn, mending," it said, "not force." I sat with it for hours, listening to its old patterns of persuasion. It was hard and it required attention, but it did not give me the satisfaction of instant correction. I would have continued that way, withdrawing from the staff, if the Yewdeep had not decided to test the limits of my resolve. The day the rootkin died began with small flaws. Sap lights flickered where they should have been steady. The corridors felt somehow out of step, although the Yewdeep was no less stable than usual. I accompanied the root singer and 2 younger rootkin to the span above the chamber I had corrected just days before. It held well enough, but the walls around it were still uneasy. The staff's correction had redirected the strain elsewhere, pushing it into places unprepared to bear it, though none were aware of it. The root singer set down his basket of resin strips. "We brace," it said. "Not hurry." The staff was not in my hand. I had slung it across my back, intending not to use it, and yet I had not dared leave it behind. That alone should have warned me how weak my refusal still sat. We began the work. Resin warmed, binding cord tightened, and the younger rootkin worked carefully, their movements guided by older hands. Then the span flexed again, only this time the movement was more violent. a sudden downward jolt that shook Frost loose. One of the younger rootkin froze, cords in his hands. Another looked to me instinctively, for I was the person who had made miracles seem routine. "Keep working," the root singer said. I felt panic, and the staff at my back warmed. It wasn't burning, it was reminding me. "No," I said to myself, to the wood, to whatever readiness lived in it. The span flexed a second time, and a hairline peel formed along the edge of the root wall above, separating into layers with a piercing sound like cloth tearing. The root singer gave orders. "Move, back," he commanded. I could resist the urge no longer and reached for the staff. I told myself I was choosing and taking responsibility. The moment my fingers closed on the wood, the staff surged with warmth, and its gem glowed brighter than before. It had been waiting for the exact kind of fear that makes refusal feel like negligence. I plunged it to the floor, and the Yewdeep reacted. The span overhead stiffened, and the flex stopped. Relief broke across the younger rootkins' faces, but then the correction continued. The staff reorganized. A tremor ran through the structure, reconfiguring it. The strain that had threatened collapse above was shoved sideways. The staff judged this to be weaker and tried to solve it. The root platform at the edge of the hollow peeled again, more violently, and this time 2 rootkin at the boundary lost their footing in the same abrupt moment. They did not cry out. There was no time for that. Their hands scrabbled once against the roots, then they vanished into the dark below. I lunged forward, reaching out with my hand, but the staff moved first. A thick root growth erupted from the floor between me and the hollow, surging suddenly upwards. It sealed the opening as if it had never existed. It closed so completely that no hand could slip through, and no body could follow. The staff had chosen an outcome and made it final. I slammed my palm against the new barrier and felt its implacable resistance. "Open," I said, my voice shaking with panic. The barrier did not respond. Behind me, the root singer spoke. "Too far." But a little of the calm in his voice had gone, replaced by the rawness of loss. I held it. I stopped the span. "Two taken," it said. "Our children." I stared at the sealed barrier and understood that the staff had acted efficiently, selected a cost, and paid it without hesitation, because it did not value what they valued. It valued outcomes and solutions, not lives. I felt only nausea. I set the staff on the root floor as if it were something poisonous and stepped away from it. The root singer instructed me. "Not touch," it said. "I won't." I looked at my hands and saw the cost in them. The skin along my knuckles looked drier, tight and grayed. The hollow at my cheekbone felt suddenly obvious and no longer subtle. The dulling at the ends of my hair was no longer an imagined flaw. It was an exchange in progress, and I had been feeding it. That night I sat alone and forced myself to look at my reflection in a shallow bowl of water. I was still beautiful. The degradation was subtle, but that made it all the more cruel. It was not ruining me all at once. It was altering me in increments that made me feel I could endure, justify, and ignore it. I decided that it ended there, right then. I would seek other magic. But that could not bring the 2 lost rootkin back. Nothing could. When Reich came, I met him in a high hall where the sap lights were dim. The root singer stood with me. The staff had been sealed away, deep and tight, in a resin-bonded container of Reich's design. Reich looked down at me through glowing eyes. "You used it poorly, Wertilish," he said. "I did." "And it took from us," he replied. Reich looked at the root singer, who nodded once. "The staff is sealed in the vessel I gave you?" Reich asked. "Sealed. Safe," the root singer said. Reich's eyes returned to me. "Did you understand the cost?" "Not fully," I said, "but I saw it was there. I told myself I could bear it." "And that it was not only you?" Reich said. "No." Reich stepped closer and looked properly at my cheekbone and the faint graying in my hands. "You feared losing what time would take anyway," he said. A simple observation that sounded like a judgment to me. His words made me feel seen in the place I least wanted to be. I begged him, "Please, I have stopped. I am not using it now. I can't." "And you think stopping makes you harmless?" Reich replied. "It makes me less dangerous," I said, a remarkably honest admission on my part. "That is not the same," Reich said. The root singer spoke. "Root can judge." "You will," Reich agreed, and then added, "but you will not keep the staff." The root singer resisted. "Staff. Keep." "It will be used again if it stays here. Not necessarily by her. Someone will justify it. Someone will be competent or tired or will believe they can manage it better. I will not risk that." I could hear myself described in those words. The staff was brought, sealed and inert, and Reich took it. "It wants hands," he said. "Let it be deprived of them," I said. "We will see. Tools do not become less hungry because someone regrets feeding them." He turned and carried it away, but I remained. The judgment that followed was not loud. They did not throw me out. They asked that I be put elsewhere. The root singer delivered their sentence, voice slow. "Wertilish. Gate." I knew where I was going and why. It was not to serve, but to wait and contemplate the wrong I had done. When I was alone again, I sat in a quiet pocket of the Yewdeep and was visited by one I thought of as a friend. Selayan Silvershadow found me there. "You look like a shrine someone forgot to finish," Selayan quipped, stepping from the dim with her usual grace. "All this waiting, all this reverence. Trees do that to you. They teach patience until you mistake it for virtue." "They endure better than you or I retorted. Selayan chuckled, amused. "They rot standing and call it wisdom. At least things that fall admit what they are." "As you admitted what you are when judged by your own?" She circled me, then spoke again. "Come, it has been decided where to put you, and it isn't here." I rose and Selayan offered an arm, as one might offer a handrail, and with that she led me out into the waiting passages, toward imprisonment and service.
Power will always offer to make you more than you are, but it does so by deciding which parts of you are expendable, and then promises you could keep it for longer by surrendering it first.